The First Century Diaries by Gene Edwards, the Silas Diary, Chapter 11. If that Roman marker is correct, we are, thank God, only 3 miles from Antioch. If Ahira is right, there should be an inn not too far distant. Weak, hungry, on the verge of collapse, the 2 men trudged forward. "There's a river ahead, I can hear it," said Barnabas. "It must be one of the tributaries of the Antheus River. We are near the Pisidian border. That means there's shelter beyond this river, if we don't freeze first." Then the worst of all possible sights came into view. The bridge across the river was completely washed away. There could be no crossing. "We're stranded," choked Barnabas. "Look," exclaimed Paul. Someone, probably Roman soldiers, had strung a rope across the river, anchoring it on each side of the water. About halfway across, the rope was submerged. "That rope is our only hope of survival, Paul. We've got to pull ourselves across or die." Paul nodded in agreement. "If we want to have dry clothes when we get to the other side, we'll have to strip now and carry our clothes across in our satchels. Paul, you go first. You carry the satchel that has your tools. You'll have to pull yourself across hand over hand, but never let go of the rope. If you do, you'll be swept under by the current. I'll cross as soon as you're on the other side. I'll carry the bag with our clothes in it, and I'll do my best to keep it out of the water so we have something dry to put on when we get across." Paul quickly disrobed, rolled up his clothes, stuffed them deep into the bag, and then placed the wax-covered scrolls on top of them. He then grabbed the rope, slipped into the icy torrent, and began pulling his way across hand over hand. He almost immediately lost his footing, but with a firm grip still on the rope, he managed to work his way to the middle of the river. As the rope emerged into view, Paul called, "The rope is frayed. It's about to break." He frantically reached out to get one hand beyond the fray. Just then the rope broke and Paul was swung to the other side. In a moment, Paul had pulled himself up onto the bank, looked back helplessly at Barnabas, then crawled over to a tree naked and freezing. He looked again at Barnabas. No words were needed. The 2 men were on opposite sides of a swollen river, with no possible way for either one to cross over to the other. Unless something happened quickly, Paul would soon be dead. As is mentioned in 2 Corinthians 26, "Often I have shivered with cold, without enough clothing to keep me warm." Instantly, Barnabas darted down the river bank in search of a place he could forage. An hour passed before he reached Paul's side. Paul was unconscious in the snow, his body blue and shaking violently. Barnabas scooped Paul into his arms and began running as fast as he could, looking in every direction for shelter of any kind. Shortly he spotted an empty goat shed. Entering it, he wrapped Paul in all the dry clothing in the bag. Nonetheless, Barnabas knew Paul's needs were far beyond such meager help. He wrapped both leather coats around Paul and once more took him in his arms and began running in the direction of Antioch of Pisidia. An inn came into view. Paul burst through the door. "I have a dying man here," he shouted to the startled innkeeper. "Move away from the fireplace, everyone. Quick, find dry clothes, anything, as long as it's dry." Barnabas lay Paul's body as near the fire as he dared, while others, speechless, scurried for dry clothing. "Innkeeper, do you have a room?" called Barnabas without turning around. "Yes. Is it clean?" "No. We are only just now opening and we have not had time." "Burn it." "What?" "Burn it. Burn the room now. That will cost you. Burn it now, do you hear?" The innkeeper grabbed a bottle of wine and a torch, then rushed down the hall, darting into an empty room. He began pouring the alcohol on the filthy straw. He stared at the room for a moment, then threw the torch onto the straw and stepped back. A moment later, the room was an inferno. Several rats rushed out. All else in the stone chamber was consumed. "Now clean it, and fresh straw. It will cost you. Do it," thundered Barnabas, still holding Paul before the fireplace. When the room was finally clean, Barnabas gave one last command. Everyone, bring a torch and come with me. Stand in the room with your torches until the room is hot, unbearably hot. Half a dozen torches were brought into the room. Covered by a pile of clothing and lying on fresh straw, Paul's shaking body began to calm. Get a doctor, Barnabas said. Your friend, he's a Jew, isn't he? Yes, a Jew. Jew or Greek, with or without a doctor, he'll die. Besides, no doctor will come out here in this weather. God only takes devout Jews. This man keeps company with Gentiles. He'll live. Now find someone to get a doctor and tell the doctor to come. But with or without the doctor, this man will live. It was not until the next morning that a doctor finally arrived. What he found was an emancipated patient. This man has a severely infected back, a high fever, water in his lungs, and he's spitting blood. What do you expect me to do? Everything, Barnabas said quietly. His back I can help. As to the rest of his condition, I see little hope. The man's strength has been ravaged. What has he been through? Imprisonment? Starvation? A shipwreck and the Augustan Road. The Augustan Road? Are you one of the survivors of the caravan? What? Asked a confused Barnabas. An entire caravan was robbed and killed. At an inn, their throats were slit. We heard that a caravan was coming, but we left before it arrived, replied Barnabas soberly. 2 other bodies were found, Greek merchants, I believe. Yes, we were with them one night, responded Barnabas. The Cestrus River also flooded. Perhaps the gods are seeking to add your friend to the list of the dead. Our God is the Savior of men. The doctor eyed Barnabas closely. Your God is the God of the Jews? Yes, we follow his Messiah. But how did you know? The stripes. They are 39, are they not? But he has been whipped more than once. Twice? He must be a rebellious one. You know much about the Jews. I am a God-fearer. I attend the synagogue occasionally. Paul stirred. A synagogue? The doctor stared at Paul in disbelief. Paul, in the name of sanity, go to sleep. Forget your call for a moment, begged Barnabas. What day is this? Monday. We will be there. You can speak? He is a Jew who wishes more than sanity or life to preach about his Lord to the Gentiles like you. That's strange. Are you sure? Jews won't even talk to me. If someday you see us in the synagogue, please tell no one of my friend's illness. Oh, that, replied the doctor. Disease is God's punishment? From the looks of his back, your God has punished him enough. The doctor turned and looked at Paul. Then he turned back to Barnabas. I suspect that by next Sabbath your friend will be at the synagogue, or he will be dead. I lean to the latter. Be there. I will be there, struggled Paul. The doctor shook his head and departed. You are insufferable, Paul of Tarsus, said Barnabas in dismay. Now go to sleep. I'll be there. For your funeral, go to sleep.